Welcome to the Big Play Cleveland Show. I'm Gabriella Cruz alongside Nick Pedone. No Chris McNeil today because he's got some big college visits to do with the kids.
Yeah, college tour with his daughter. Crazy times for Chris because I know he just went through prom. She's a junior, so she just went to her first prom and now college tours.
Wow.
I feel like Chris is going to be extra gray when he comes in here next Monday.
Extra dad mode activated. And it's funny. What was his meme this morning? Did you see it? It was like,
yeah, it was like the future's now
old man. The future is now, old man.
Yeah.
So good luck to Chris and his daughter. I remember that process. Did you visit many colleges?
I only visited 2. So where did you visit, and then where did you end up?
I visited St. Louis. I visited Duquesne.
Oh, damn. So you were really popping around.
I did bop around.
Yeah.
I made it a thing, and then I visited John Carroll.
So were the other visits all like athletic based too? For Duquesne and
I knew I wanted to run in school, and yeah, I just knew I could run wherever. Like running's one of those things you can walk on and get a lot better. So like it wasn't like a do or die thing. I didn't have any scholarships. I was very anemic. Blossomed later in my career. So just looking at colleges, I just wanted to go to a place that I resonated with, and I thought like I could get better with running.
Okay, and then ultimately, why John Carroll then?
JCU, I didn't want to go to JCU because it was too close.
I feel like we're giving good advice here for kids that are learning.
I know.
At schools.
People watching, I will say what I missed on. I missed on going to a school that was going to help me do my job.
Yeah.
which sounds so obvious, but I didn't know what I wanted to do. They force you out the door, and they're like, well, pick a career path. And I was like, I don't know. I have no idea what I'm doing out here. So I just went with John Carroll because it felt right. And that was as simple as it was. I knew I wanted to nurture my spiritual side.
Yeah.
And I knew that with a liberal arts college and the Jesuit education, they're very forward thinking, social justice, serving your neighbor. So I was all about that. I wanted to continue that mission, if you will.
Okay, I'm kind of similar. I didn't go to many. I went to Bowling Green first.
Okay.
And I remember my parents drove me down, and both my parents were in the front, and I was in the back. And it's not that far, but like that drive there's nothing that really surrounds Bowling Green. So I remember like when we were pulling into like you see the signs like we're in Bowling Green. I'm like, there is nothing around here. So like I was
both
already
my
like
sisters went there.
I was like kind of freaking out a little bit in the back of the car because I'm like, there is not a whole lot going on.
Toledo,
like, around
Ohio, baby.
Yeah, around this place. So we toured it. It was cool. Also, too, I remember vividly, like the dorms didn't have air conditioning.
Oh, yeah.
And I was like, that's a non-starter. Like that's going to be kind of tough. And then I toured Kent. There was a lot of like familiarity because I went to Nordonia, so like a lot of people from Nordonia just either went to like Kent or Akron.
Yeah.
So it was easy to just kind of default to Kent. They have a pretty good journalism program
they really
too.
do. They
so
prepare you over there.
Yeah, I was like, okay, cool. Like, yeah, we'll just go with Kent. And I kind of just defaulted to it, to be completely honest. So
cool. Good for you.
Good luck to Chris. He told me his daughter is only touring Miami so far. So
okay. Does she know what she wants to do, or did she not?
I don't know. We didn't get that.
It's tough.
We'll,
it's like
we'll have to revisit with
your
him
brain
next
is
week.
not nearly fully developed, and you're just making these big decisions about what debt you're going to incur for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
But yeah, I say go with the place that feels right, but also consider about what you really think you want to lean into or have your. That's why I had to do a master's because I didn't really have specific broadcast skills, how to write for news and shoot, edit. All those skills were really nice to learn at Syracuse.
Yeah, and then you ended up just going to like the best school imaginable for that. So it worked out.
Yeah. Got to run, got an iron infusion, and got to ball out in a condensed 1-year program that like was the most terrifying time of my life, and we made it.
We made it. We will reconnect with Chris next week. We have a packed show, Gab. We're going to recap Browns draft. We're going to bring our guy Browns with Noah on. Love talking to Noah Weiskopf.
One of our favorites.
The OBR. We're then going to get to Jensen Lewis. Now, another thing, throughout all the craziness this morning, there's no Wi-Fi currently at our studio at Burke Lakefront Airport. So we are doing this show literally the old-fashioned way. Like
Chris leaves and we just like the
Wi-Fi breaks
goes
and
out.
then so you guys are going to get a good show. We're going to stitch this thing together. When we return, we're recapping the NFL draft with Browns reporter Noah Weiskopf. Don't go anywhere. More of the Big Play Cleveland show straight ahead.
Welcome back to the Big Play Cleveland Show. I'm Gab Cruz. We got Nick Pedone, no McNeil today, and we were just doing a little college visits recap because Chris is out today leading his daughter around Miami.
Red Hawks. That's his alma mater, too. That's going to be cool for a dad to, tour your daughter around.
Do you think he's doing that old dad thing that's like, and that's where my dorm was?
Yeah.
And I
spent a lot of time in here. This building was where my math class was. And she's probably like, okay, Dad, you're embarrassing me a little.
Wouldn't that be hilarious if they just had, a banner of his Twitter, Abby, just, somewhere hanging? The weird meme.
Right where all the kids walk in? That's where it would be funniest.
Oh, that's too funny. Okay, well, we are going to do a little NFL and Browns draft recap here. We are bringing in Browns Insider for the Orange and Brown Report, Noah Weiskopf. So thank you for joining us. We got to do this all with audio because we got a little bit of technical difficulty here. But, hey, thanks for popping in. We want to know right off the rip your overall thoughts on how the Browns did in this draft.
Yeah, I think it was as expected, right? I think that the Browns are in a position where their roster doesn't, have a need. They don't have a gaping hole where they need to draft for a starter. So I think that makes it a lot easier. And I think the Browns really were able to take the best available player in each round that they picked at each selection. So I think that that's what they did. And I think that, just going for overall value is very beneficial. And to have these guys and these young guys go in and not need them to contribute right off the bat and force all of these guys to earn their spot, earn their playing time. I think that's really beneficial. So I think overall, I think that that's what they did, but it's so hard to get grade right off the bat. I know I see all these A+, C+, and then you look 3 years down the road and it's, some 6th round pick named whoever it might be that, you give a D+ for, and then they turn out to be a Hall of Famer. So grades are so hard after the draft, but they drafted for value and they drafted guys they like. So I think that they're really happy with the outcome.
Yeah, a lot of people thought they'd go maybe wide receiver early on with those first couple picks. Do you think the guys that they liked were already taken, or were the ones that they chose in Michael Hall and Zach Zinner just too good to pass up?
Yeah, I think that it's super important that they were able to continue getting depth up there in the interior on the defensive line, offensive line, right in the trenches. I think that's really what they wanted to do, and I think they were able to do that. They ended up getting a receiver, Jamari Thrash, in the 5th round at 156 from Louisville. Just sort of I didn't think that they would take a wide receiver early just because of how loaded that room is right now in terms of you really only had room for one more rookie, and that room is more or less filled out. With Amari Cooper, Jerry Jeudy, Elijah Moore, the 3 at the top, and then Cedric Tillman, David Bell are 2 guys that'll continue to contribute, and then Jamari Thrash now thrown in there as a 6th guy. After that, I don't know, usually they keep around 6 receivers. So I don't think that, guys like James Prochet, Jalen Darden, Michael Woods are 3 guys that, probably are on the outside of that competition right now. But they didn't have room for many more wide receivers. So the one wide receiver that Andrew Berry has drafted in each one of his drafts was expected. But, drafting one in the 2nd round, that's more or less someone that you'll expect to contribute a good amount. And so, that just wasn't too realistic for the Browns to do in terms of what they already have in that room.
Noah, a lot of people nationally raved about the Michael Hall pick. Obviously, a very good defensive tackle during his time with Ohio State. We saw him contribute in the Buckeyes' big games. I think back to that game against Notre Dame. He was really good. We heard that Jim Schwartz, after the pick was announced, bursted out of his office and was pumping his fist, celebrating that selection. Just how good of a pick do you think Michael Hall was? Because I know you had an opportunity to cover him a lot down there in Columbus.
Yeah, for sure. He's such a good guy, too. And that's really important. But especially being a Cleveland native, going to Streetsboro, being an Ohio guy, I think that really makes a big difference, too. But he's a really impressive player. And his pass rushing ability is something that the Browns didn't have too much of on the interior defensive line. And so for them to add someone like that and not need him to necessarily make an impact on day one, I think is really big. It's a really big deal. And Mike, having him in the interior to rush the passer on 3rd downs and then lining up guys like Miles and Za'Darius on the outside and then having Mike on the interior and then an Obo Okoronkwo who they like to move around. All those guys are pass rushers. So to be able to have that and that versatility on 3rd down, I think is going to be crucial for them in the Jim Schwartz-led defense.
Yeah, how much input do you think Jim Schwartz had in the Michael Hall pick?
I think that I think he definitely wanted him. I don't know necessarily how much impact he had in terms of like draft this guy, but I think that they identified Michael Hall as a guy that they really wanted, and they had a bunch of trade offers to trade back on that 54. And normally that's something that Andrew Berry always likes to do, but defensive tackles are coming off the board pretty quick there. And so for them to be able to get a guy like that and stay put at 54 is what they really want to do to make sure that they got one of their defensive tackles that they liked. And like I said, having a guy like that he's not as big as some of the Dalvin Tomlinsons and Quentin Jeffersons, but he's really lean, and he's going to be able to, brush the passer more effectively than any of those other run stoppers will be able to on the interior.
Yeah, I mean, hey, man, we just watched a 6-foot defensive tackle retire, and he's going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer in Aaron Donald. So I've seen some of the freak out that Michael Hall is a little bit on the leaner, smaller size, but I don't think there's anything really to worry about there.
Do you think they'll make him put on weight? Or just
I think that kind of happens naturally, right, Noah? Because this dude is still like early 20s, and I think like just being a part of an NFL training regimen, like like the weight will probably just naturally happen, with like strength and conditioning, right, Noah?
I don't know. I hear a lot of players say it's really hard. Like you have to stuff yourself even when you're not hungry, just to it's like a whole process.
Yeah, I don't think that it'll be an issue. I think that it is nice to have some guys that are different in size, right? Like I think that he can be really effective at his weight, and I don't think that he'll put on too much weight. His age off the top, or I mean his age is young. He's in his low. I think he's 20 or 21, but his weight, I don't know it off the top of my head, but he'll definitely be able to get it up 5-10 pounds if need be. But I think he's, if I'm not mistaken, around 285, 290. So.
Yeah, he's only 20 years old, and yeah, he's 280 right now. So a little bit smaller, but like we're saying, the dude is literally 20 years old. Like it's going to be a good pick. No, another thing I wanted to ask you about too, a late round pick or UDFA. I know Saturday is always crazy because once the Browns hang up the phone with their last draft pick, that's not where the work stops. Then they start getting on the phone, recruiting undrafted free agents. It's something that Andrew Berry has had a lot of success with during his time as the Browns general manager. Who is one guy in your mind, Noah, that Browns fans should be keeping an eye on that was either a late round draft pick or a UDFA that the Browns might really like?
Yeah, I think that Nathaniel Watson is a guy that is really underrated in terms of what Browns fans are looking at in this draft class. He was a 6th rounder. I can get to undrafted after, but Nathaniel Watson is a guy that balled out at Mississippi State. Just from I think he's 6'1", 6'2", or I think he's 6'1" linebacker. He had 137 tackles last year and 10 sacks as a linebacker. He's a really talented player, and I think that he definitely can develop into their next Mike linebacker. Jordan Hicks is on a 2-year deal, and by the time his deal is over, he's aging. They'll be able to put in a guy like Nathaniel Watson in there in the middle if he can eventually pan out and then become their next Mike linebacker. But I think undrafted wise, I think it's super important that the Browns' track record of having undrafted free agents make the team. That's really impressive. That's really what undrafted free agents want. They want to be able to look and see that the Browns keep undrafted guys. They don't always cut them right off the bat. So I mean, even like a guy like D'Anthony Bell is going to be fighting for his life again to make a roster spot. He is a guy that is 27 years old right now, which I think a lot of people don't realize. He's going to be 28 now. And he was an undrafted guy that they kept. And then last year, obviously, Ronnie Hickman they kept. And then Diabate, the linebacker. So I think that any of these guys really have a chance. But Winston Reed is a guy that I think I've identified at linebacker that is another one that could really have a chance to make the 53. But as long as these guys are able to contribute on special teams, that'll be the key factor, whether or not they'll be able to cement themselves a spot on the 53-man.
How about any other teams? Did you feel like any team got a good steal somewhere?
Yeah, I think this is an easy one. Mason Tipton is a guy that went to Hoban that I thought the Browns were really going to try to get and ultimately end up in Cleveland. He went to Hoban and then went on to Yale. He was a guy that wasn't really sought out after by a lot of teams during the pre-draft process. The Browns were actually one of the handful of teams that were in on him from the very, very beginning. And then he was invited to Toledo's pro day to go out there and show teams what he can do. And obviously it brought out a bunch of scouts, about 60 scouts with Quinyon Mitchell doing his on the field work. So that was lucky for him. And he actually ended up running a 4.32 dash. So
Wow.
About every team in the league after that had reached out, and the teams that hadn't done work on him started to do some work. So he was a guy that I thought the Browns were going to bring in because they were in on him from the start, had shown him the most love throughout the process, and met with him about 5 times during the offseason or during the pre-draft process. So he was a guy that I thought would end up in Cleveland. The Browns told him they wanted to find a way for him to be in the orange and brown, but ultimately signs a deal with the Saints. I think that's a guy that I actually did anticipate him being in Cleveland, but the Saints obviously landed a guy that could make an impact for them.
How about last one before we get you out of here, Noah? What did you make of Troy Franklin's kind of draft day slide? Because obviously he was probably never going to be a first-round pick. It was just a loaded receiver class. And then even early day 2, there was a lot of good players. Ladd McConkey was off the board. Keon Coleman kind of right away on day 2 of the NFL draft. But I think Troy Franklin's a guy that a lot of Browns fans liked. I know the Browns definitely did their homework on him. Not only did they meet with Troy Franklin, but they also met with his quarterback Bo Nix, which obviously they weren't going to draft. They have a quarterback. What'd you make of kind of his tumble and then ultimately his selection? They're late in the NFL draft.
I think it's perfect that he ended up with Denver and with Bo Nix. I think that's the perfect fit for him. But ultimately, I mean, we see this time and time again with guys like Troy Franklin and some other guys in this class that just fall because of character issues. And I think that that's probably, I don't know necessarily how accurate that is. Like, you could say some guy has a character issue, he falls, and then, he becomes a superstar. So I don't really understand the thought process behind these character issue things or stuff like that, especially leading up to the draft. We see a lot of the media trying to, say this guy has an issue or this guy has a character issue. I know we saw it a little bit with Malik Neighbors, but that obviously didn't affect his stock at all. But yeah, I think Troy Franklin's a really intriguing process, and I think he'll do really well in Denver. With Bo Nix being reunited with him, I think is a big deal. But ultimately, these guys just need a chance, and for them to be able to get the opportunity to join a team, and obviously, as long as they're selected in the draft, I mean, it's a pretty good likelihood that, especially him, be able to make the 53 and be able to contribute. And with Sean Payton.
Love it. Noah Weiskopf, thank you so much for popping on with us. Appreciate the insight as always. Next time we'll have to get you actually in here or on video, do it a little bit better, but appreciate you popping on, Noah.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you. Alrighty, we are going to step aside. When we return, we're talking guards with Jensen Lewis. More of the Big Play Cleveland show right after this.
Welcome back to the Big Play Cleveland show. I'm Gabriella Cruz alongside Nick Pedone. We're switching gears here a little bit, and we're going to talk baseball. Noah McNeil, again, he's out. He's doing some little college visits with his daughter, so we're wishing him luck there over in Miami of Ohio. And we are going to kind of recap this Guardians series with Jensen Lewis. We'll bring him in. We're doing audio again because we've had the technical difficulties, but we got a cool logo for him, of course. Bringing the heat with Jensen. So thanks for joining us.
Yeah, of course, guys. Thanks for having me again.
Yeah, really no technical, just one technical difficulty in that we don't have Wi-Fi. So
Wi-Fi is kind of important.
Yeah, we found a workaround. No big deal. Jensen, appreciate you popping on. I think the biggest question people want to know from this weekend series against the Braves: what happened on the base paths with the Guardians? What was up with some of that base running that we saw? Because the Guardians are second in the American League in stolen bases, but this weekend it just seemed like it was a little bit rough.
Yeah, Nick, and I think when you look at just kind of how series go when you play really good teams, if you just make one, maybe two mistakes, that's the difference in the ball game. And some lackadaisicalness, some mental errors on the base paths that we're not accustomed to seeing, especially from a guy like Jose Ramirez, and just running into outs where overall a team like this you would feel would be a little bit better prepared that way. So one of those series where you you hate to see it, but at the same time, you take a lot of good out of this. I think we talked last week, guys, that this was going to be a really good litmus test about where this club is at. And obviously, when you go in and you get to the equalizer there on Saturday in extra innings and then come back and you take the lead into the 8th inning on Sunday afternoon, you felt really good about your chances. But all in all, I think this team proved to themselves that, okay, we belong in the conversation with the best teams in the league. And, they nearly pulled off something that hasn't happened to the Braves all season long, and that was hand them back-to-back losses at home.
Ooh, yeah. How encouraging is it to see Bybee and Lively shut down that Braves lineup?
Yeah, Gab, I think those two guys, and probably more so Lively. I think we expected it from Tanner. Those first couple of starts of the season where just, some inconsistencies with command. It feels like he's ironed that out. And what a sparkling performance, on Saturday. 9 strikeouts, no walks, and 7 shutout innings. He was masterful. But Ben Lively has really crept up here on the radar, I think, for a guy that had to come in and try and win a spot in spring training. We know he had the issues health-wise with Xavier Curry. So those guys starting on the IL to begin the season. But we've seen the last couple of years that this Guardians front office has been so good at being able to acquire depth in the offseason, have options, whether it be out of spring training or going down to AAA to bring up to the big league level and contribute right away. I don't know how much more you can ask of Ben Lively. I mean, he has really been spectacular in his opportunities so far in the rotation.
Awesome. And also, we've been praising this bullpen and Hunter Gaddis in particular. What happened to him in this Braves series?
It was a tough homecoming for him. That's what they kept saying on the broadcast too. It was like, oh, you kind of hate this for him,
Is it a cause for concern?
To have a meltdown in this spot.
Yeah.
The lights of being back home were a little too bright, if you will, maybe.
Yeah, guys. I mean, there's nothing like pitching in front of your friends and family, and knowing that he grew up just about a half hour from where they were playing this series at Truist Park. I mean, of course, the adrenaline is going to be going through him, but I mean, up to that point on Saturday, he was as dominant as any setup reliever in baseball. And, the back-to-back days there, Saturday and Sunday, it was tough because you felt, okay, at least going through it myself, whenever you have one of those bad outings, you want to get back in right away. And if the next day, if possible, you want to be able to have that opportunity. I'm sitting there listening to it on the radio saying, okay, I mean, this is redemption central here. What a great opportunity. All right, you didn't get it done Saturday. You get it done Sunday afternoon, help the team to a series victory. Ultimately, it ends up, becoming one of those back-to-back blown save scenarios. But I think for the body of work, what he's been able to do up to this point, knowing you weren't going to have Trevor Stephan, we've talked about this, guys, the last few weeks, that was going to be an area where they really needed to find someone they could trust. And out of the gate, I'm not sure how much better you could ask of Hunter Gaddis and even Scott Barlow. Guys, remember that too. The bases loaded, less than 2 out scenario where Scott Barlow had to find his way out of that to give them the opportunity to win on Saturday. So between Gaddis and Barlow, Nick Sandlin has been very good. Tim Herron has been great. I mean, those guys have really been awesome in front of Emmanuel Clase, and a big reason why this Guardians team is, 10 games over 500 entering this week.
Absolutely. Taking a look at this weekend, Jensen, I know there's a big series with Houston. Then we got the Angels in town once the Guards get back in Cleveland. What are you kind of anticipating with these series coming up?
Yeah, first and foremost, take advantage of a battered Houston Astro team. And guys, we talked about it also last week where you look at some of the statistics, particularly on that pitching staff. It is just bewildering to understand how ineffective their bullpen has been. So this is a scenario in a series where you don't want to give them life. You don't want to give them hope. And looking where the pitching matchups are to start, Hunter Brown and Justin Verlander are probably 2 of their better starters at this point, with Framber Valdez just coming off the IL. We won't see him. You guys remember he drew the no-hitter against us last year. So I think they're in a good spot from where the rotation lines up. And then you see the Angels come in. They just got absolutely pasted by the Twins offense in LA. And again, kind of their issues with injuries on the offensive side, but also, their rotation has been inconsistent as well. And the one thing, guys, it's going to feel like turn back the clock moments when you watch Mike Trout come in here on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, because he is off to just a scintillating start. So, kind of circling him, obviously, in this lineup without Shohei Ohtani now. That's the guy we know we can't beat us. Taylor Ward, similarly there. But I think this will be a great series for the Guardians to come back, hopefully off, some momentum, winning that final series of the road trip against the Astros.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jensen, for joining us. Next week, we'll be back to our normal show. Get your video up, get our video up, get Reflog back in here. But we appreciate the time, man.
No problem, guys. We'll talk next week.
Thanks so much.
Go Guards. Yeah.
A quick look around the AL Central. The Twins have won 7 in a row. The Royals have given up the fewest runs in baseball, and the Tigers are kind of hanging around.
I know. They're doing a great job hanging around.
I wonder if this is going to turn into a tight race or if it's going to be that way all season.
I know. It's one of those things where I think we got to just see where it plays out. But, man, it's weird that Detroit, of all the teams, is the team that's kind of sticking around and really hanging around. We'll know for sure, too, that those games will mean more when the Guardians go to Detroit and when they come here. Got to win those ones.
Totally. All right, well, let's take a quick break, and we'll be back with more Big Play Cleveland show after this. Welcome back to the Big Play Cleveland show. We are getting to our fill in the blank here, just to kind of recap our Cleveland sports here, Nick. I'd give the Browns draft a blank letter grade.
I hate doing this, Gab. Grading the second and the third and the fourth and the fifth round of the NFL draft right after it happens is so dumb.
Yeah, and you don't, how do you know?
Yeah, because people do it. I mean, people have given them their grades. I guess I'll give them a B, right? They did what they could with what they had.
Yeah.
When you don't have a first-round pick, it makes it really hard to find starting talent. Now, Andrew Berry has done a really good job of that ever since the Deshaun Watson trade. Gab, we've seen JOK be drafted in the second round. Great pick. We saw Martin Emerson Jr. be drafted in the third round. Really good pick. And guys that are impact players. So I'm going to just give the Browns a blanketed B. I don't think they got anybody that's gonna start right away, but I think the pick of Michael Hall, you look at that and it makes sense. Years removed from this, I think that's a guy that could start once the Browns move on from Dalvin Tomlinson, some of the vets that they have on one-year deals. Same thing with Zach Zinter. Joel Bitonio was 33 years old. That's the age that Joe Thomas was when he decided to step away from the game of football. Joel obviously is still looking for some of that playoff success that Joe Thomas didn't have an opportunity to get, but he's sooner to retire than we think. So I think drafting Zach Zinter in round 3 was a smart move as well, because that's a guy that you might need sooner than anticipated on that Browns front.
Okay, with that said, the pick I'm most excited about is...
I think it's tough not to say Michael Hall. He's a dude that's from here, grew up a Browns fan. It was so funny to hear him say, he's just 20 years old. So the media was asking him, what players were you rooting for, when you were growing up here in Cleveland? And he was like, Johnny Manziel, Trent Richardson. This dude has been a tortured Browns fan, kind of just like the rest of us in this younger generation of fans. So I think I'm definitely excited for him. I think with Jim Schwartz as his defensive coordinator, he could definitely develop into being a really good starting caliber defensive lineman. But then I agree with Noah too. I think Nathaniel Watson was a great pick in the 6th round. That dude is SEC battle tested. I know Hanford will be pumped about that too. I mean, a 6th round pick that won SEC Defensive Player of the Year. He led the SEC in tackles. That's a really good value find. And another dude that could be making a bigger impact a little bit sooner than what we expected, because that's a spot where the Browns are just super, super weak. And I thought they would draft a linebacker a little bit earlier, to be honest with you.
All right. Well, I'm going to hit you with a little more Browns draft, or actually general draft. Right after this, we'll take a break. Welcome back to the Big Play Cleveland show. We're continuing a little bit of our fill in the blank as we evaluate the NFL draft this year. 6 quarterbacks taken in the first 12 picks. No defensive players until pick 15. And, Nick, only 4 Buckeyes drafted. That's the fewest since 2013. Yeah. This year's NFL draft was
It was weird. It was record setting, like you said, all the quarterbacks drafted in those first few picks, and then obviously no defensive players until pick 15 was super strange. So I think it was a weird year for the NFL draft. I also found it interesting too that a lot of these guys are players that graduated high school in 2020. So these are a lot of like COVID pandemic kids that had their first couple years of college football cut short. We know that makes it a little bit tougher on NFL scouts, NFL GMs, decision makers to draft these players because they don't have that full body of work. A lot of kids were playing 4-game seasons, 5-game seasons because of the pandemic, and then we're transferring in and out of schools trying to find more eligibility and just find that opportunity to play at the next level. So I thought it was weird kind of year round. And I'll tell you this too, I am so glad that the 3-year torture for our Cleveland Browns is over of no first round pick, because it feels like, you know, the Cleveland is a Browns town. And for the last 3 years, it has felt like there really isn't a reason to get up for or to get excited about the NFL draft, because the Browns haven't had a first round pick. And candidly, the player that they traded those 3 first round picks for hasn't lived up to that bill, and it hasn't even been close. So I'm excited that the reign of terror is over.
Paid our debt.
We've paid our debt, and the Browns are going to be back on the clock next April in Green Bay. That'll be a lot of fun for us.
All right. I totally agree with that. Was there any special moments from the draft that you enjoyed watching?
I think it's always cool just to see, like, in general, you know, the guys get the call, and it's cool too to see like the guys that are there with their families, the guys that don't make the trip, especially like day 2, you know, maybe they didn't get invited to sit in the green room and everything. I will say the one pick that broke my heart, I was in here watching the Browns' second round pick on Friday. Roman Wilson, well, I know we had him on an interview on some of my social media channels as he got ready for the draft. Receiver from Michigan, really promising, young dude, receiver. I thought fit a need for the Browns, you know, really fast, but obviously the Browns are stacked at receiver. There's no reason for him to start right away. Gab, would you believe the pick before he gets taken by the Pittsburgh Steelers? Oh. I was sick. Oh. I tweeted the video of my reaction when the thing came across the board at the bottom. Roman Wilson, Pittsburgh Steelers. I was disgusted.
Dang, right?
Would have been nice. But I like Jamari Thrash too. I think we could have some of these rookies join us on the show. Kind of wink, 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 nudge, 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 nudge. Working on a few things. So some of these guys pop in and be big play guests in the very near future.
Cool. Well, I hate to switch gears like this, but the Cavs.
Oh.
Ow. Oh. Speaking of another gut punch, in order to win this series, the Cavs need to
find God. I mean, it really felt like things flipped for the worse, Gab, when this
series. Prayers up. Y'all need Jesus.
Yeah, they do. It felt like things kind of turned for the worse when the series went to Orlando, and it feels like the Magic have the momentum. That's the cool part,
though. What happened? I just don't understand. It feels like a tale of two teams. Like I don't know who we became where we are going to lose by 38 points down there.
Well, and what was so crazy about it was, how do you go from never losing the series at all? Like, the Cavs held the lead in the series. Like, they were never losing in either game, 1 or 2, to get blown out by 30 plus in game 3. And then game 4, it was a great first half. I mean, they were up at halftime and then completely embarrassed themselves in the second half of that game and got blown out again.
What do you think? What do you attribute that to?
It's interesting. I hope that I'm wrong, but I think there's a lot of demons going on with the Cavs. Chris Fedor, who covers the Cavs for Cleveland.com, said in his podcast, The Wine and Gold Talk, that after the Cavs lost in game 4, there was a little bit of finger pointing going on. The players were kind of saying without saying that JB Bickerstaff needs to do more to scheme them open, get them better looks. They only took like 18 3-pointers. And they were shooting the 3 a ton during the regular season, a ton during games 1 and 2. So you don't like to see that the players are kind of dodging accountability, because candidly, they've been bad. And I think JB Bickerstaff very well could get fired if this goes south, but I don't think he deserves all of the blame. He deserves a piece of it. But Donovan Mitchell, you're supposed to be a superstar. Darius Garland, you were an all-star before Donovan Mitchell got here, and the players are just not performing at all. And it is kind of shaping up to be another another clunker in the first round, Gab, kind of similar to what we saw last year against the Knicks. And I know you said last week, like, we needed them to be aggressive, keep that intensity.
You can't
up.
win the first 2 games and do what you just did. That is painful.
And like, they were intense and they were aggressive on the road, and things got contentious at times, and the Cavs stood their ground, but still, they just kind of blew both of those games. And then once the lead got out of hand, it was like they threw in the towel. That's never good to see.
And that's the bigger bummer about it. Do you think we'll be able to regroup quickly enough? I mean, we need a 180. Let's be honest.
Yeah, they do. They need a 180, and if they don't, the organizational sweep is coming. Like, it sucks to say, because you never want to have a team as promising as the Cavs with a good young core 4 and a bright young head coach. Remember when JB Bickerstaff got here and replaced John Beilein? It was like a new, renewed energy for this Cavaliers bunch. So they need a 180, because with the expectation after the Donovan Mitchell trade that an actual bona fide superstar was coming to Cleveland after LeBron James, the expectation was a lot of playoff wins, Eastern Conference Finals potentially. We haven't even gotten close. So they need a 180 to happen. And I think it all starts with a win in Cleveland at Game 5. It'll be nice for them to have the home crowd behind them. But if you drop that one in Cleveland and then go to Orlando for Game 6, things probably get kind of scary in a hurry.
I'm not going to like that. If that happens. All right. We're not going to be manifesting a loss. It's going to be a dub.
Yeah, I think Game 5 is going to be sweaty, but the Cavs play better at home. And they need the role players, too. Yeah. I mean, the 2 big off-season additions, if you want to call them that, Max Strus, George Niang, they've been more hurt than they have been help. And on the road, you need your role players to travel. Yeah. And those guys did nothing on the road. So I think getting the fans at Rocket Mortgage Fieldhouse back behind them could be a net positive, because they need literally anything going in their favor. Like, it can't just be Darius, Donovan, Mobley, and Allen trying to shoulder the weight of this thing. Like, they need shots made from literally anybody else.
We need shots made. I remember I asked George Niang in our interview for Cruise in Cleveland, check it out on YouTube, how do you bounce back? And one of the things that he really harped on, because, he's been in the league for a minute, is you got to lean into your routine. You can't, it's crazy to say, it sounds easier said than done, but you really can't lean into ruminating on what has taken place last play, last game. I love to see them just lean into your routine, shoot your shot, get there early, get in your vibe, get in your role, like you said, because we're going to need those role players.
Yeah, I mean, 7-year NBA vet is George Niang, so this is a guy that's been around the block. He has playoff experience as well. So, like, that's somebody that the Cavs should be able to lean on in this series.
Yes, time to compartmentalize.
Yeah, exactly. And they need to bounce back in this first round against Orlando, because it is still salvageable. And that's the best part about having home court advantages. Now it's a best of 3 series. You got 3 games to win 2, and 2 of those games will be played in Cleveland. That's the benefit of having these home games here. You need to take care of business on your home floor, and the rest should fall in line.
Get her done, Cavs.
Get her done, or else there's going to be some dark, dark days.
I will shed a tear, seriously.
I'll say this. The ping pong balls, the Cavs don't have any of those. They're not a lottery team. I'm looking at the end of that first round. I haven't seen the commitment from Bronny James to Duquesne yet. Take Bronny in that late first round.
All right.
Get LeBron back here.
I feel it, Nick. Last fill in the blank for you here, the Guardians, okay? The Guardians player that has been most surprising this season is?
That's a good question. I'll go like maybe not most surprising. Well, maybe most surprising. We knew Stephen Kwan was really good. We knew Andres Jimenez was really good. Last year, kind of an anomaly for both of those players. It was a down year for the entire offense. So I'm glad to see they're back and performing. And I'll say that they're not a surprise to me, because I knew at their core those guys were both very talented players. I'm going to go with Ben Lively. That's a guy that a lot of people around the league hate, because he was kind of washed up. Our guys down at the Big Play Cincinnati show hate him because he was bad for the Reds, really, really bad. but he's
But
kind
he's
of been
coming
a spark
alively.
plug. Yeah, he's coming alively. I like that a lot. He's like the Guardians' Joe Flacco, if you will. I mean, he's getting in there. He's doing work. He's not perfect by any stretch, but he is a good, serviceable veteran. A lot of people really, myself included, thought the sky was falling a little bit with this starting rotation once Shane Bieber was hurt, and Tristan McKenzie hasn't been the same player, and we know he's battling through a litany of injuries right now as well, so kudos to him for continuing to push through. But yeah, Ben Lively coming alively has been my surprise, because once the Guardians picked him up, I saw our guys in Cincinnati kind of laughing at us like, oh, have fun with this old fart, like he's not really good anymore, and he has been pretty good for the Guardians. So I'll say that's been my surprise, pleasant surprise player.
A lively performance. We'd like to see more of those. Okay, well, that's a wrap for our fill in the blank. Let's take another break, and we'll be back with some big play bets.
Our big play bets on the show this week and every week are presented by our friends at Tipico Sportsbook. And Tipico is changing the way that you bet. Yeah, we've talked about this Tipico cashback rewards for the last few weeks. It's exciting. Tipico has given out over $1 million in cashback rewards since they rolled this thing out a couple months ago. If you guys are new to sports gambling, or if you're betting on other apps, check out Tipico. They're doing something that's completely different. This isn't like a bonus bet or a bet credit, a free bet. This is actual cash back. Once you place enough bets, it's going to go right into your account. There's a little progress meter, like a Starbucks app for you until you get your reward. It's very transparent. You got to download Tipico to hear what we're talking about. They're going to sprinkle in a little added bonus for you guys. When you deposit $150 on Tipico with promo code Cleveland100, you're going to get $150 worth of protected bets, sweat-free bets. It'll be a pair of $75 bets for you to use risk-free. If those bets lose, you get them back as credits, and you get cash back on top of that all. You got to be 21 years or older to gamble in Ohio. Gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER. Gab, let's actually start with our Cavs.
Okay.
Game 5 at Rocket Mortgage Fieldhouse. Would you believe me if I said the Cavaliers are favorites in this game? 4.5-point favorites.
I
So
would,
despite
because
all
look
the
at how
panic,
we were game 1 and 2.
despite all the panic,
I know.
we're favorites, man. We're favorites.
All right, let's go.
Let's go. All right, 4.5 points. We're gonna build a same game parlay. What needs to happen? Should we pick
Donovan
Cavs money
Mitchell-
line or no? Like let's start there. Should we pick the Cavs to win, or is that like jinxing it? Like, what's your thoughts on that?
Not verbally, we will not commit to that.
All right, so we're leaving the Cavs out of it. All right, so we're going strictly players.
Strictly players. Donovan Mitchell we gotta see some Spida points.
All right. Over. Let's go 25 points for Spida.
We need it.
All right.
You do
Let's go with our old reliable. I mean, the one guy that has completely rectified himself from his performance last year, Jared Allen. We'll go Jared Allen, 10 plus rebounds in this game. He has been super good. And Gab, I'm throwing it back to you. We need one last leg. Give me a player that's gonna perform. It could be anything.
Maybe we need a bench performer.
All right, should we go
Strus?
We could go Strus. We could go Karras. Karras needs to get going
Karras is
too.
a good one. I think maybe Karras.
All right, Karras LeVert over points. So we got Mitchell over points, Allen over rebounds, and LeVert over points for Game 5. Game 6, Cavs Magic Friday. Are the Cavs able to steal one on the road, or at least keep this thing within 20 points? Because the two games that we saw in Orlando have been blowouts. I needed the Cavs to at least keep this thing close.
We need to. Like, I am shooketh. I can't believe I'm so invested. I mean, I can. It's Cleveland. You know, you're a fan through and through, especially when you're born here and you just bleed it. I just can't fathom anything else. I want them to win so bad. So
yeah, keep this thing close in Orlando. Let's take the Cavs to cover there, because the Magic will probably be favored on their home floor. So we'll at least keep the Cavs to keep this thing close. As we wrap the show, make sure to check out some bets this week for the Guardians. They've got a fun series against the Astros. Like Jensen said, beat up on a bad Astros team. And then this weekend, Guardians and Angels, Bybee, Lively, Cookie. Let's have the vets throw some strikeouts this weekend against Mike Trout and the Angels. Thank you guys so much for tuning in to the Big Play Cleveland Show. We will see you next week.